Right. Okay. Yeah. So fasting. So just a reminder, time restricted eating. That's the TRE, or also often called intermittent fasting as well. Although that can also be used for things like the 5-2 model I've put here. Basically, time restricted eating is like condensing your eating window. So that's one model. Other models are like doing periodic 24, 36, or 48 hour or longer fast, as Tom was talking about putting into his kind of regular routine. Or there's a model of doing a 5-2. You eat 5 days, you don't eat for two. I mean, 5 days consecutive, and then you don't eat for 2 days consecutive. So that's a common model. And yes, and generally the people who like do this as, within their, as an established part of the lifestyle will regularly have, a 5 day rest from food every quarter or something like that. So, but anyway, the goals of fasting. Why do we do this? It's not just fasting for fasting's sake. There's no, fasting. It can be a bit of a fad. It can be a bit of a fashion. There's the actual goals that are a bit more interesting. So first of all, it's a one-off weight drop. Tom, you mentioned that you lost weight. Now, probably tomorrow, don't be surprised if you lost 2 kilograms, and now tomorrow you're 1 kilogram heavier. It's 2 steps down, 1 step up, but it does help shift. If you feel you've been stalling, to have a 48-hour fast, for instance, just to take that 2 steps down in your kind of weight loss, if weight loss is what you're doing. I've certainly seen this with another client on a couple of occasions when he's done that once a month. It's kind of, you can see in the figures, it's a sudden kind of step down. But it also deepens your fat adaptation. Okay, so first of all, the composition that you are hopefully still sticking to, where it's protein prioritized, but with accompanied by fat as your main source of energy intake, will be helping you with that fat adaptation, as will the eating window. But the 48-hour fast, or 36 hours, or even the 24, 36, 48 and longer will help really that's the next level of that fasting, the fat adaptation muscle. And the next slide we'll talk about why fat adaptation is desirable. Then in this slide here, which right, this one here, which is a bit blurry, etc. And it's just kind of an approximation. It's more, take it more as an illustration than actually nominally, after this many hours, this happens. But it kind of shows you all the things that start to happen after 15, 20, 24, 36 hours, right? So it stabilizes your blood glucose, reduces, which of course also means your insulin levels go down. Insulin is the fat storage hormone, or insulin does a lot more than that, and it's really important, but it's the one that puts stuff into your fat storage. If your insulin's up, you can't release fat from your fat cells. So that's one thing. So your blood glucose is going to go down, and your insulin's going to go down with that. Then after a while, you got this autophagy thing. Autophagy, literally eat yourself. It's the cleanup mode. It's cleaning up dead cells, dying cells, bits of proteins that have like serve their purpose, etc., etc. So it starts scavenging all these things. And you can see that HGH, human growth hormone. Okay, so that increases, and that's human growth hormone is let's say a repair. It's kind of regeneration hormone. So it's starting to increase kind of the regeneration part. You got the yellow, that's sort of a yellowy line. That's weight loss and ketone. So weight loss actually just means lipolysis. That's the release of triglycerides from your fat cells into the bloodstream for breaking down into fatty acids and glucose. And the process of that creates ketones. So weight loss actually means just converting your body fat into usable energy. And the byproduct of that is ketones. Ketones is brain food. It's your brain our brains run better on ketones than glucose, even though your doctors will tell you must have carbohydrate. Then you've got these intestinal stem cells. I must say I don't know much about intestinal stem cells, but what happens is that from your bone marrow, you get these new stem cells created. Stem cells are like the blank sheets of our cell generation that are then, the body then creates the appropriate cell for whatever the body needs to. So if your liver needs regenerating, your body will use the stem cells to create new liver cells for regeneration of a liver or skin or whatever it is that happens. So again, you can see after this, we're looking here at a period of about 2.5 to 3 days. And then some of these processes, according to this graph, anyway, illustration, continue over the next few days. So that's to tell you that's about the why fasting in itself is kind of useful. So that's the autophagy, the apoptosis, the timed cell death, stem cell production, etc. Contrary to, it's kind of counterintuitive, but it actually resets your metabolism. As in, it kind of gives it a boost, it speeds it up. It sounds strange, but this effect comes after you've refed. Okay, so and also, it just provides a practical alternative for certain real life situations. So, we talked about traveling, that if you're going from door to door, spending 36 hours in transit, whether it be aircraft, coach, train, or whatever, or by car, it's an alternative that you have in your armory, so you don't have to worry about getting food or getting the right food or getting food that you want to put in your body. You can just simply not eat, full stop. But it's also useful if you're in a food desert. I put there desserts. Obviously, I mean food at desert, which unfortunately is most kind of city centers, shopping centers, airports, and places like that. They're generally what I call food or nutrient deserts. So it means you're not forced to go and eat crap that you might not want to be eating because it doesn't fit into who you're trying to become or what your health weight goals are. So again, it's an option that you have, you could use. Options create freedom. You don't have to do it, but it gives you the option, which is your freedom of choice. Fasting isn't starvation. Okay, it's not. We don't need to starve anymore. In the past, they wouldn't talk about fasting. They'd be talking about, oh shit, we haven't eaten for a week. We need to find some food. Okay, it's a motivationary. It's kind of part of how we used to live a long time ago. But today we don't need to starve in our Western world. I'm sure there are, of course, many unfortunate people who don't have access to food 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But in our case, it's not starvation. It's an intentional, time-limited pause in exogenous substrate consumption. I made that up. What exogenous substrate consumption means: taking in food and calories from external sources rather than using our own. Okay, so that means that, as what I said, you eat your reasonable, adequate food, reference meal builder. You switch off the eating for a certain amount of time. It's not generally quite useful to plan ahead. Okay, it's gonna be 48 hours this time, and then you switch on food and you have a reasonable, adequate meal afterwards. Okay, so it's not starvation. It's an intervention, you can call it. Longer fasts, that means 36 hours and longer, do require some thought. The last meal, we talked about that during the fast. So electrolytes, hydration, mineral balance, you want to make sure, because you're not taking in that, you don't want to be draining your stores of valuable minerals in your body without, you should replenish them a bit at least. Exercise, useful to exercise during, particularly muscle exercise. You want to keep your muscles active, although light, you want to go and do a heavy hit session or something. Electron gathering, I'm talking grounding, I'm talking being in the sun, I'm talking and the light impact, I'm talking sauna, maybe a bit too intense, but red light therapy and that sort of thing. Gathering your electrons, because remember, we don't. I don't know if you saw my post about breatharianism or my broadcast last Sunday. Breatharianism, the idea that you can actually live on just sunlight and air. Hypothetically, it's possible because we don't need calories. We're not a combustion engine. We don't burn calories. We use electrons. Electrons don't just come from fat and protein and a little bit from carbohydrate in food that we eat. It comes from oh my God, bless you. Being in contact with the ground, it comes from natural springs, water, etc. It comes in the food, the drinks, the water we drink. It's created when you are cold thermogenesis. It's created when you're in the sunlight, etc. So just to bear in mind, that's something you can use to help sustain you on a fast. And then breaking the fast. Yes, I've got a few points about that. So just to decide this last time, composition and timing is the right way to do it. You can't do composition or timing. So you don't want to do a fast after you've just had a bowl of rice with chips, or Pringles or a bar of chocolate. And the same thing is, you don't want to eat from 7 in the morning till 9 in the evening, just fat and protein, because that's not going to work either. You want to, both are important. So yes, the food emphasis before and after the fast. We talked about the slow introduction of food back into your guts, the gut bacteria. So that means, something like fermented food, or even for me, the idea is kefir milk, kefir milk afterwards, electrolytes, then the protein, and the electrolytes can come from your bone broth, or they can of course be from a drink. Protein, which means, when I say protein, I mean fish and animal protein, and DHA, because it's quite important to replenish your DHA stores after fast. DHA, we know, comes from fish, sea fish, crustaceans, seafood, in its readily usable form. And fat, because you need to provide a bit more, you need to give your brain that signal, because don't forget, every night you have an energy inventory. If you overdo it with fasting, you risk your brain getting the message, there's not enough supplies around, store everything you then eat. You don't want that. So don't overdo it with fasting, and make sure that when you do refeed, you're giving ample energy to your body. So that night, your brain gets the message, it's okay, there's plenty of food, don't need to store this, don't have to, become anally retentive about energy. We can, tomorrow we can relax a bit. And while penance is not the paradigm that I try and spread, I might have been bad, I must now over exaggerate the other way to be a better person. But nevertheless, fasting as a detox is a reasonable idea. So if you've had a weekend of debauchery somewhere, then why not? Then have a proper meal on the Sunday night, whatever, egg, steak, whatever it might be, fish, and go and have a 24, 36, 48-hour fast as a detox, but not as a kind of, oh, mea culpa, God forgive me, I've been bad, slash yourself on the back with branches type of thing. Or, okay, I now need to detoxify my system, give my liver a break, etc., etc. So basically, fat adaptation, how do you do it? Inverting the fuel proportions of your food. So from mainly glucose, which unfortunately is how most people in modern world live, and glucose, I mean carbohydrate, but carbohydrate basically is glucose once it hits the bloodstream, or is glucose once it hits the bloodstream, apart from the fructose part, which goes straight to your liver and basically causes your liver to slowly collapse and die. So the full proportions of what you eat is mainly fats rather than the carbohydrate. So that first thing will help start your fat adaptation. Then yeah, and then the benefits. So it's the benefits of using fat for fuel. It's your diesel. It's your long distance fuel. It's the stuff that lasts you, for a long time before you actually need to refuel. In fact, you could almost call it perpetual motion, because when you burn fat in your mitochondria, you're creating electrons. You're creating water, metabolic water. Metabolic water is all around all your cells, and the more you have, the better, because it actually works as a battery. It stores negative charge that your mitochondrial cells need to function, to get more, to move the electrons along, to create the ATP, etc., etc. So it's almost like a perpetual motion. That's why when you're running on fat, your energy levels don't go down as fast as if you're on glucose, burning glucose. Low emissions. I'm using again the car analogy, but when you burn glucose, it's very leaky, it's very messy. First of all, you're not getting many electrons from carbohydrate, and secondly, you're getting a lot of free radicals, a lot of the byproducts that, yes, we do need some reactive oxygen species, some reactive nitrogen species. Some of these, these free radicals that we need that for the immune system, we need it for various reasons. But when we have too many of them in the body and the body can't cope, that's when you get your cancers. That's when you get all the autoimmune diseases. So when you're burning glucose, be aware you're like burning an old 60-year-old engine that hasn't passed its MOT. You're out of your backside. There's all this black smoke coming out and it's clogging up your filters. When you're burning fat, that's kind of your clean fuel. That's your literally is your hydrogen. When you're using fat for fuel, you've got easier access. Your body doesn't have to change gear to start using your own fat stores, releasing the fat from your fat cells. Second, and then the last point there is that when you're actually using fat for fuel, using primary fat, you're creating, the actual process creates ketones. So they, by the way, are also kind of metabolites, free radicals, if you like, but they're ones that actually your body really uses efficiently, more efficiently than glucose for the brain, for instance. So there are advantages. Sources of fat, your own fat stores. Of course, then there's all you look at the meal builder, is basically your saturated fats, some polyunsaturated fats like from fish, omega-3 fats. Of course, we need some omega-6 fats, but generally we get enough of them just from food. In fact, we get too many of them because we're all eating this vegetable oil, which is a very intense, a very condensed form of omega-6, and we need to actually readdress the balance. And how do you accelerate fat adaptation or leverage your fat adaptation? So fasting, as we've of course discussed today, the MAF, the maximum aerobic frequency exercise that we've talked about, that means exercising at a maximum threshold of a certain amount of beats per minute. Cold therapy, blue light mitigation, that means reducing the effects of the blue light we get from screens and artificial lighting, because that raises your blood glucose, and you don't want to raise your blood glucose because then your body starts to as a matter of priority, store the fat that you've eaten and use the glucose or do something with it. So that's one way. And the other way is to maximum sun exposure. And then things like infrared light therapy or infrasauna. All these things do various things like decouple your mitochondria. That's something that actually speeds up and accelerates fat adaptation and fat burning.